And listen, and there's nothing wrong with being rich alone too. There's nothing wrong with being an employee. But
Mhm.
what I recognize is like making more money does not mean that you're a better person, does not mean you're a smarter person, does not even mean that you're that much more efficient. It's just the mechanism by which you've chosen to spend your time and create a career for yourself. So I might be smarter than the guy who makes $100 million a year. But if he makes widgets and people buy 1 million widgets a year, that guy makes a lot of money. It's just what it is.
Mhm. What's up, everybody? You back here with another banger with Off the Field. If you're new here, this is a sports and finance show. And make sure you guys like, subscribe, and comment to things and conversations. And if you want to get your questions answered for our up and coming guests, put them down below in the comments. So let's get started. Today we got a special one for you. Eszylfie Taylor is the founder and president of Taylor Insurance and Financial Services in Pasadena, California. He advises individual business owners and wealthy families. And Taylor is a 15-time qualifier for the $1 Million Roundtable and the top of the table producer since 2011, placing him in the 1% of the producers globally. How you doing today, Eszylfie?
It's the best day of my life. How you doing today?
Yeah, I'm great. I'm great. Glad for you to come on the show and just share your experience, and just anybody that's out there that doesn't even know about the financial world, definitely want to bring them in and just take a tour and take a life what it's like being on this side. So for the people that don't know, how did you even get started in the financial services world, or just in your journey in finances? Because I know before you was a four sport athlete. You was playing basketball, football. So how did finance even find you?
Yeah, I'd say that the underpinnings were always a part of me. I mean, I was a kid in the sixth grade who'd bring the Wall Street Journal to school, and we're a Harvard cap, right? So I always thought about business. My father's from Ghana, West Africa. And if you've ever met a West African, I always say if you put 4 West Africans in a room, 3 of them have some kind of postgraduate degree, right? So I never thought about going to the NFL or NBA per se, although sports were a big part of my life. And it was certainly a dream of mine to play at the collegiate level, which I did. But I always thought my future in business and my future and success would be in business rather than in athletics. And so by chance, I found my way into the world of financial services. I wish I could say that was my life dream and I had it all figured out, but it really wasn't. There was a professor at my university who introduced me to a managing director of a firm. He said, "You want to come down for an interview?" I was like, okay. I didn't know really what he did, right? It was a big, high-rise building. Everyone was wearing suits and ties. And I was like, sounds cool. And I take this assessment test and I score off the charts. And he's like, I've never seen a score this high in my entire career. He's like, you want to be a financial advisor? And I'm like, yeah, all right, sure. I didn't really know what that meant.
So you took a test the first day you even know what you was taking a test on?
No, it's not uncommon with some of the larger career shops where you take these assessment tests. And these tests are nothing that you really need to study for, but they're more so gauging your temperament. For example, if I said, "Hey, if I told you you're on a full commission job, no salary, right? But you get paid, you eat what you kill." If I said, "Hey, is that really intriguing to you?" Right? That would be like an alpha like me. I'm like, "Yes."
Mm,
Or you go, that's kind of moderate, like that's kind of scary, but I would do it. Or you're the person who's like, no way, like I want to know, I'm getting a check on the 1st and the 15th. So
mhm,
a lot of the questions that they asked were less about aptitude. There was some math in there, but it was really about your personality traits and how the answers that I gave stacked up to those who'd been successful in the business. And
mm,
so this entrepreneurial spirit and a hard work ethic and a desire to be great, then it was a perfect alignment for me because I worked one, I guess you can call it a real job. When
mm,
I was in college, I was 19 years old and I had a job at a bank, and not as a teller even. I worked in a back corporate office, and all I did was analyze transactions for spending irregularities and compliance and inputting data. And I literally wanted to like bang my head against the wall every day that I did that job. My coworkers hated me, right? Because I'd
mm.
get a stack of papers or a directive and I'd just bang through them because I'm an athlete. I was like, let's go.
Right.
They would tell me like, man, slow down. And I
Mm,
didn't even understand like, why are you telling me to slow down? There's work. Like, let's get as much done as we can. They had realized because they had been beaten down by corporate, is it didn't matter how fast they were. You were going to get paid the same, whether you busted your tail or you went through the motions. And that was just not attractive to me, right? Like, and so I really gravitated to this business because I realized early on we're paid for our work ethic and our aptitude, not our age or our tenure, right? I was making more money than my parents by the time I was 25 years old. That's what really drew me to the business.
So let's talk about that, bro. Because you being from West Ghana, like you said, that's not really were they thinking, okay, I came to America to live the dream life, so called, right? Working a 9 to 5 or just working a high paying job, maybe a doctor or maybe a lawyer. So when you told them and you brought to them, yeah, I want to do financial services and follow the entrepreneur route, were they on your side all in, or was they was like, what you mean? Like, were they shocked about that?
Yeah, no, it's funny because the dichotomy, right? My father's from Ghana, but my mother's American. But my father was the one who was really staunch and like my dad, double PhD. My dad's more like, how many PhDs you gonna get? You gonna be a doctor? You gonna be a lawyer? That kind of 100%. So when I was like, I'm going into financial services, he was like, no, like, what's your salary? And I'm like, there's no salary. And he's like, oh, he's like, go work for somebody else, get some security. And I couldn't articulate it at the time. It's funny because I was featured in a LinkedIn commercial that aired during the Super Bowl, and I literally shared this story in that piece. And I talk about like I didn't know exactly how it would work or why it would work, but I just believe in me, right? I've just been bucking the system my whole life, my whole career. Like there's some people that measure twice and cut once, and I just kind of eyeball it and swing away. And
Mm,
for me, I'm like, if you told me I got paid the same, regardless of my effort, that's not an attractive proposition to me. But if you mean to tell me, because again,
mm,
there's one other important thing to note. I wanted to be a millionaire at 22. I graduated at 22. I wanted to be a
mm,
millionaire by the time I was 25. So I already knew I couldn't do that going the traditional route, right? Because I'm going to the job fairs when I'm in school, and this job's paying 42,000, this job's paying 48, and I'm like, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I'm doing the math, and the math is not mathing, right? Like I'm not getting
exactly.
to $1 million making 50 grand a year. I need
Exactly.
different. And so it's funny because it took a while, but at some point, I think I bought my first house when I was 23 years old. And I remember I was driving with it's funny, as with me and my brother, my younger brother, my parents were in the back of the car, I'm driving. And I just hear my dad talking to my mom, he's doing it, man. And I was like, yeah.
Get that encouraging boost, that energy boost right there. So
Yeah.
talk about that though, bro, because a lot of times you want to take control of your life. I know me personally, being an athlete, being a quarterback, it's kind of like you have control, but you don't. You don't have control what school you go to. You don't have control what coach is going to be there the next year. I had 6 different offensive coordinators just from being in college. So what got me in the financial game is like I really want to take control of my life. Like you said, I want my work ethic to show in my paycheck. I don't want to just have a set salary. So that's kind of why I made off the field financial tailored towards athletes, because our work ethic as athletes is just it's rare. It's compared to somebody that was a non-athlete. And I'm starting to see that now. But how important was you being an athlete translate you over to the financial world?
Yeah, I mean, I always say how you do some things is how you do everything, right? And so, I mean, first of all, I'm not a big guy. You know, I'm a 5'8" collegiate basketball player. So I've always had the odds against me, but I'm the type of person, tell me I can't do something, right? And then it's going to fuel me even more. No one's telling you to get shots up. No one's telling you to go to the gym. No one's telling you to eat right. No one's telling you this. It's on you, right? And so I think it bodes well coming into any entrepreneurial field if you're an athlete, because there's a great level of self-reflection and discipline that you have had to had and exhibit in your life to be successful, right? Even for me, later on in my career, I remember talking to my managing partner. I started at a big firm initially out of college, and he was shooting down recruits that are coming in for interviews. And I remember asking him, why are you shooting down all these people? You guys hired me. I had no work experience. And that's what he was referencing. He didn't like the work experience. And he
Mm,
goes, I'm like, I was a kid. I came in here. I didn't even have a job. And he's like, well, he goes, even though you didn't have work experience, right? You were a collegiate athlete. You graduated university with honors, right? So you had already shown that, right, you were going to go a step and beyond, and you had self-discipline. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. And so for me, it's kind of the same thing, right? Some people need, and this doesn't make me better or worse than other people. It's just my own journey. But
mhm,
some people need to be told you have to be here at this time. You have to do this. And for me, I'm fine being free, right? No one
mm,
needs to tell me to work. No one needs to tell me to make phone calls or respond to emails or network, because I know that you cannot have success without putting in the work. And so what you're referencing is control. There's a lot of variables we don't control. And that's why I teach people, and I tout of a whole training system called the Taylor Method. With the Taylor Method, the system that I use to train financial advisors that I created, that one of the key principles in there is focusing on process and detaching yourself from outcome. I don't control the outcome. You don't control the outcome. We only control how we show up, right? And we can all test this, whether it's in sports or in academics or in our careers. maybe you had a game and you practiced hard and you were prepared and you lost, right?
Hmm.
Or you
Yeah.
showed up and your teammate didn't show up, or you threw the perfect pass and your receiver dropped it. What else could I do, right? I can't
Hmm.
catch it myself. That's how I look at life. Have you done what is required of you? And if the answer is yes, then you can't really be mad. I deal with this. I've got 4 daughters, and my oldest daughter, she's 18 years old now, which means she knows everything. Right? Of course, she wants me to do something. I ask her to do something. I ask her to do something, and she didn't do it. Right. And then, of course, I didn't do what she wanted me to do. So, but she's mad at me now. Like, Dad, I asked you to do this and you didn't do it. And I told her,
Hmm.
I said, you cannot be upset about the results you didn't get from the work you didn't do. So this again speaks to focusing on process. Have you done what's required of you? So that would be my first question to any listener, right? Before you blame your coworker, before you blame your boss, before you blame your husband or your wife or your whoever, my question for you is, have you done everything required of you to be great? Yeah, what other people do. People oftentimes think of changing the world, but rarely think to change themselves. Have you done what is required of you? And if you could check that box, yes, I have done that, then you got to let go, right? And
Right.
so maybe you'll win, maybe you'll learn. There's no
Hmm.
winning and losing, just winning and learning, right?
Right.
But that's all you can do. Focus on that.
No L's, always lessons.
Yeah.
But let's talk about that. Let's talk about being an entrepreneur, running your business, and having to deal with your family side because your business want attention, your family want attention. So how do you balance both of those
I
aspects?
would say for a good part of my career, even today, it's a struggle, but definitely in the first half of my career, I didn't really balance very well. I used to reference it, I call it the sickness, like I had the sickness. My office hours, eyes open, eyes shut, right? I'm
Mhm.
grinding away. And I think we are all products of our upbringing. I'm a big believer of our nurture over our nature. Sure, we're all built in made a particular way, but I believe our environment, what we experience, certainly has a greater impact on who we end up being. And I was raised, primarily by my mom. My parents split up when I was a kid, and my mom sacrificed and did everything she could for my brother and I. But she always also let us know everything she was giving up and how much she was giving up.
Mm.
Right. And so for me, I'm like, well, when I have a family one day, I'm never going to tell them what I had to give up. I'm never going to make them feel guilty. I'm never going to put it on them. I'm just going to do so well, it won't matter. I traded being home at 5 o'clock every day. I traded being home every weekend. I traded being at every drop off and pick up for school with grinding to make money and then supporting my wife, supporting my partner to be able to be there to do those things. And I'm like, you hold down the fort, right? I'm going to go hunt, right?
Mhm.
So it's funny because we're all screwed up in large part because of our parents. You go through these cycles with your parents where initially when you're little, your parents are all knowing they could do no wrong. They're the best in the world, right? And then becomes this point where you realize like, hold up, you don't really know what the hell you're doing, right? You start
Exactly.
realizing, wait a minute, they're people too. And then there
Mhm.
can come a point where you actually start to place blame, right? Or you're hypercritical, right? Why did you do
Mhm.
this? You shouldn't have done this, whatever. And then I feel like you come back and this last ring is you have a greater sense of appreciation and softness in that you recognize, you know what? I think they did the best they could with what they knew. And I think that typically comes when you have children of your own and you realize, damn, I'm winging it too. Am I making all the right choices? Am I doing everything that probably not, but I'm trying. And so the trade-off for me that I found is like my daughters would never tell you, hey, my dad guilts us for the things that he provides to us, but they could then say, but he's not there all the time. So
Mm.
then it's like, you can't win, right? You want the private school, you want the car, you want all the trips and all the stuff and the clothes. You want that.
Exactly.
And so that's one thing again I say, right? You cannot have the rainbows without the rain.
Yeah, choose your heart right there.
Use your heart, as I say, right? So I think that's where your support system really matters. And I think I would say it would be very difficult for someone to say, yeah, I work 20, 30 hours a week at the onset of my career and I'm ultra successful. Let's just don't see that. I generally tell people, again, you have to have the sickness, you have to have an obsession with your craft to be great at it. But having support from those who understand your grind, understand your mission, and can fill in the gaps where you leave them, I think is great.
Let's go deeper into that though, because it's crazy that you said you have an amazing wife that held down the fort for you while you was going on your entrepreneur journey, right? But times get shaky, right? You don't always produce the same income that you produced last month. Income starts to fluctuate, it starts to change. So, first of all, what work hours did you set to have success? And what does a day in the life on a grind, really trying to get to it, really trying to make 40,000, 50,000, 6 figures a month look like?
Yeah, man. Maybe I'm not the best example. I coined the phrase, I had a starter marriage, right? So like my oldest daughter is my ex-wife, right? So that's a
Okay.
different whole different life. But what I will say, which where we were never not in alignment, is in the idea of giving the girls the best life that they could have, right?
Mm.
And so whether teachers own their belief on relationships and marriage, and maybe you have a partner, then you're with them forever. Maybe they're just a season of your life. And so I was definitely meant to have these girls, and that's definitely meant to have that union in that time. And I think going back in retrospect, what would I do different is I feel like if you said, well, what was my schedule? There was no schedule. These are my off limits. There was no, this is the time where I cut my phone off. There was no, this is when I don't travel. I'm going everywhere, anytime, any place required of me. My average time leaving the house was probably 7 a.m. My average time coming home was probably 8 or 9 at night. That was the average. And then there's the mornings where I got to leave earlier. And there's the nights where I'm not coming home till 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. And I did that every day.
You gonna just let that slide like that. So what are you doing between those hours? The people need to know to get.
I'm shaking hands and kissing babies,
Mm,
right? So for me, moving my body is very important. So I call it like I'm obsessive compulsive. And for the most part, I've been able to gear those into positive things. But like, I don't do anything a little bit. I don't own a company. I own 12 companies. I don't work out every day. I work out twice a day.
mm,
Everything is an obsession. So for me, that usually consisted of being at the gym or at the yoga studio by 7:30 in the morning. I would bring my suit and tie to class. Boom, set 8:30 is done. Boom, 8:45 showered in a suit, bang, in the office by 9. And then that's phone calls, that's meetings. Pre-COVID, most of these meetings were in person, right? So they'd either come into my office or I'm traveling around. I had a driver back
mm,
then, right? Because if I had to be on the road, I felt like I needed to be more efficient, either responding to text messages or emails or phone calls rather than trying to find out where my next meeting was. That was
mhm,
it. So it could be meetings, phone calls, lunches, seminars. I used to do a lot of evening events too. So mixers, parties, socials, seminars, you name it. Like I said, yes. I said, yes. Yes. Going to go here. Yes. And the one thing that I'll say is, again, this was my life pre-COVID. I did everything exhausted. And so, sure, maybe I have a 5 o'clock meeting. Maybe my daughter has a 6 p.m. piano recital, and I'm there.
mm,
I'm at that recital. 6, it's done at 8. I got a mixer at 8:30. Boom.
mm,
Out. Kiss my daughters goodnight. Boom.
mm,
And I did that. I did that for years. And again, I'm not even saying that was the best thing, but it's what I did. I think I was so afraid of failing. I was so afraid of not being able to provide, but I left no stone unturned. I left
mhm,
nothing to chance. I never felt comfortable saying, okay, I've got 4 meetings today. That's probably enough. I was like, I could get another one. I could do one more. I could do more. And
yeah,
so it wasn't for me until COVID hit. And then I realized it's okay to take a break. Just don't quit. It's okay. I mean, you see how I'm dressed right now. That happened 5 years ago. I was in a suit and tie. I've gotten to a point where I'm him, right? So I
mm,
could be in a suit and tie, I can be in a t-shirt, and I'm just
no,
as
no
and
same
just
result.
my work is just as impactful. And if my daughters wanted to ride bikes at 3 o'clock, okay, let's go ride bikes. I would have never done that before. Not
Mm,
because I couldn't have, because I own my company and do whatever I want, but I just would have felt guilty riding bikes in the middle of the day when the sun's out. Oh
right.
no. There's a little bit of, I guess this comes of trusting the process and knowing that if I engage in some particular activities, if I make a certain number of phone calls, if I send a certain number of emails, if I engage a certain number of people, my outcome, I'm comfortable at the net result of that outcome, right? What will that be?
Mm. So, as a financial strategist, right, and you saying that you own multiple businesses, first of all, how important is it to own multiple businesses? And secondly, does anybody look at you different for owning multiple businesses? Because I know sometimes I may have conversations with people and it's like, you got to keep the main thing, but I feel like it's really important to diversify your portfolio and definitely your business portfolio. So, is that a hard thing to do, or is it if somebody's focused on finance, should they just focus on finance, or it's okay to run multiple businesses?
I don't know that there's, I mean, look, if you look at it statistically, the average millionaire has 7 streams of income. So I think more so than the number of businesses would tell someone to run, what I realized probably midway through my career is the financial services industry. It's a business that can make you rich, but not wealthy. In that, a true business runs in spite of you, not because of you. Meaning, I'm him, right? I put my skill set in this business against anybody at any firm in the entire world. But this is the only meeting I can be in right now. So there's not scale to it. in that sense, because me being an individual advisor. So I can do well, but I can only do so well. So I can make perhaps millions of dollars, but can I make tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars as a solo practitioner?
Mhm.
I cannot,
Mhm.
because I'm one guy. And so when I look at it, you're wearing a polo shirt. The CEO of the company that creates that polo shirt is most likely a multimillionaire. But do you know his name?
Actually, this is my shirt that I created,
Okay.
but we
You
use it
may
for the
very
people.
well created the shirt, but did you create the polo itself?
No, we did not create the polo
That's
itself.
what I'm saying. So you went and paid $12 for a shirt, put your logo on it. Now you may go back and repurpose that shirt for 40, $50, but the guy who owns the t-shirt
Mhm.
company made that shirt for 50 cents. And so point being, if you had to think, because people don't often understand when I say rich or wealthy, they like to think it's the same, and it's not. Like Kobe Bryant, when he played for the Lakers, he was rich. Jerry Buss, who owned the Lakers, he was wealthy.
Well,
Makes sense. And so,
sure.
and listen, and there's nothing wrong with being rich alone too. There's nothing wrong with being an employee. But
Mhm.
what I've recognized is like making more money does not mean that you're a better person, does not mean you're a smarter person, does not even mean that you're that much more efficient. It's just the mechanism by which you've chosen to spend your time and create a career for yourself. So I might be smarter than the guy who makes $100 million a year. But if he makes widgets and people buy a million widgets a year, that guy makes a lot of money. It's just what it is.
Mhm.
Anybody watching this podcast has been around somebody who's rich or successful, and you have scratched your head like that guy. Really? And I argue that you've probably met people that are really, really smart, super impressive people that make 40 grand a year. One of the biggest misnomers in business is that your intelligence is a direct correlation to your income, and it's not. Your
Mhm.
income is directly correlated to the nature of your relationships and the scale by which you run your business. Those are the
Mhm.
two.
And just talking about that, because I know you made your first million when you got into real estate.
Yes. So I realized that my path to making $1 million of income, I don't think I made $1 million in income in a year until I was probably 30. I
Mhm.
made my first million in income. So the way I made my first $1 million is buying real estate and buying a house for 300,000 and then fixing it up. And now it's worth 500,000 and pulling out equity and then buying another house. And that's how. So now how was I able to qualify for those mortgages? Was able to qualify for those mortgages because I was making money in financial services. But the real estate was good because the equity was creating wealth for me. And then I was renting those properties. And so that rental income was offsetting the cost of paying the mortgages. And so that's how I made my first $1 million. Consequently, I lost my first $1 million not too long after that because I'm buying all these properties between 2003 and 2007. 2008 happened, my $1 million of equity went to negative $1 million in equity literally overnight, right? And
Wow.
now I'm like, oh crap, right? I've got a 2.5-year-old daughter, newborn twins, and my freaking net worth just went negative. Crap. And my bills are 40 grand a month. And but
Wow.
again, this business, although my assets went down, my ability to earn income was only exponentially growing. And so I would say it's not a matter of what you make, it's what you keep. My
Mhm.
position in this business, both in training advisors and Taylor Method, I have my reality show, Mind Body Money out that's on Amazon. Whether I'm talking to advisors or the general consumer, my idea is I'm trying to be for other people what I wish I had.
Mhm.
And I made a lot of these mistakes because I was blazing a path that I didn't see anyone do before me. I couldn't go to my parents. I couldn't go to my friends. I didn't have anyone around me that was as hungry as I was or successful as I was. And to be frank, I wasn't even quote unquote that successful. I was just
Mhm.
the most successful guy in my sphere. So what I sought to do and still seek to do is I want to be the least successful guy in the room. I don't be the
Mhm.
most successful guy in the room. If I'm the most successful guy in the room, how can I grow? How can I
Right.
learn? I'm always looking to be better. In this life, you're getting better or you're getting worse. There's no
Yeah.
staying the same. So, like, my pursuit is I'm going to be a billionaire. And my confidence in being a billionaire isn't because I'm the smartest in the world. It's because who am I seeking to surround myself with?
So, quick question off of that. The first one, let's break that down. So, you made $1 million and you lost it within the next 5 years. Then you had this business to fall back on to bring you back up. So, for somebody that's coming new into the financial services business, what advice would you give to them?
It's a great business in that you can blaze your own path. That's one good thing about this country is that you can change your stars. There's a lot of places in the world you can't change your stars. I have a friend of mine who's from South America, and she was telling me in her community, like how you're born is where you stay. If your mom is a maid, you're gonna be a maid, right? Like,
Mhm.
you can't just jump levels, right? And this is a country where you can jump levels. So for anyone that would watch me and go, man, Eszylfie, it's easy for you, man, because you're so articulate, right? And so smart and so handsome, it's easy for you. I would say, no, I would say one thing even here as I'm sitting at my desk, here's one thing that I keep. This is a constant reminder. This is my planner book from when I started my career in New York life. And the reason I reference it is people are like, man, it's easy for you out in LA and you're working with multimillionaires and you have all this stuff and celebrities. But I like to remind people I didn't start that way. In this, I have written down my award, like what I wanted is I'm like, I want to make $3,500 a month, man. As I think about that today, man, I probably have $3,500 in my backpack. My car payments are $7,000 a month. My mortgage payments are $50,000 a month, right? $3,500 to me today is a rounding error. But back then, when I lived at home, had a car, I was like, man, that's I'm living good. You know, I'm going to Sizzler with that. And so I look at that and look at the type of deals I was writing. These are the policies I was writing. $51 a month, $84 a month, $34 a month, $28 a month, $12 in a month. So it's not like I came in making tens of thousands of dollars and I'm like, I've got all these business owners and all these people. Like I was just grinding. And I just got better and better and better and better. And so this business is that not only can you change your stars, I can show people and help people get there much faster than I did, right? And so again, I had this business to fall back on, but think about this. None of us are getting out of here alive. So every single person you talk to is a viable prospect for insurance because we're all gonna die. So as long as you're talking to people that have money and love someone, there's an opportunity to plan. And then again, when you talk about building wealth, most people don't want to work until they die. They want to accumulate some semblance of wealth to be able to retire one day. And that's just not going to happen because you're a nice person, because you're smart. You have to actively do things. And so you can help people protect and accumulate wealth. And so when you break down not the selling of insurance or selling of annuities or selling of mutual funds or critical illness, when you break it down to the actual problem that we're looking to solve of protecting your family and helping you accumulate and preserve wealth, who doesn't need what we do? And so whether this is your focus or you're not sure about the industry and you're dipping your toe in the water, is something that everybody needs. If you make your focus about helping people, about serving people, rather than what you get out of it or what you make. And I'm not, look, I came into business that I want to be a millionaire. I did not graduate college and say, I want to help everyone I can help. That's not what I said. I was like, I want to make a lot of money for me. So I got into this business and understood, wow, what a calling. I have the opportunity to make money helping people. Okay. And that continued to shift over the years. Just help, just serve, just give. I say this all the time, givers get. And then in return, then you'll be given.
So I manage these NIL deals coming up for the athletes coming up, right? And now the whole NIL space is kind of like a whirlpool. And I know you deal with a lot of talented athletes, a lot of high profile people. So what advice would you give to a high schooler entering to the NIL space with a whole bunch of money that they never even seen?
It's a slippery slope. I also work in that space and I have a business manager. I had a long conversation this weekend and we're talking about it. Imagine you're 300 grand, right? So not even, because some of these NIL deals can be seven figures, right? $1 million plus. But let's say 300 grand, which is a decent deal, right? So 300 grand and you're 20 years old. And you're like, man, I made 300 grand. The first thing I want to impart to the kid is you did not make 300 grand. You made 200 grand because Uncle Sam's coming for a third of that money. So now imagine you're 20 years old, you get 300 grand and you blow all the money. You lend it to your friends. You buy your girl that necklace she always wanted. You could go buy that Bentley, Rolly, whatever it is. And you got this money at 20 years old because that's, of course, it's always going to be like this. And then you get hurt or you come up to expectations and you don't go to the NFL. You don't go to the NBA. You don't play Major League Baseball. And now you have to go get a real job. And as I mentioned, these real jobs out of college are not paying 300 grand a year. Maybe you're making 45 grand, 50 grand a year if you're lucky, 60. And the problem I look at it is if you're not a good steward of this money, it could ruin the kids. Meaning, if you had $100,000 tax bill and you blew all the money and you're making $4 grand a month in your real job after that, how are you paying that money back? You could literally have to file bankruptcy. It could ruin you before you even start your life. So tax planning is really big. Investment management is really big. I believe that the future of NIL should change, in my opinion. Pay the kids everything they could get. I'm not like, well, they shouldn't get paid. They're amateurs. No, the universities, the broadcast, they've been making millions, tens of millions off these kids' backs. Give them the money. But I just don't think they should have full reign of it. I think that money should be put in part in trust, and you get maybe a chunk here. Take care of your family, buy stuff for yourself. Great. You earned it. And the other half of this money, you can't touch until you're 25 or 30 or something, 40, whatever. Right. So that you can't blow it. It's kind of like if you're familiar with the shoe deal that Allen Iverson's agent did with Reebok. His Reebok shoe deal He couldn't touch any of that money. Actually, he just turned 50. I think that trust just became available to him because he was blowing all of his money from his paychecks. So he blows through 100 million plus of his paycheck money. And the only thing ultimately that he had to hang his hat on was, I'm 50, get this money, that my Reebok money. And so I think that would be a better thing. But those rules and regulations are not in place and they're not standard, which means everyone can do whatever they want. So that would be my advice, is that yes, enjoy the fruits of your labor. Yes, maybe you have a night out or that are outlandish, but pay yourself first. Put that money away to create wealth and safety for you first.
So before we get out of here, we got to talk about the famous 401k versus IUL debate. What is your take on that?
I mean, that's like comparing an apple and an orange. I've spent half of my career in a conservative, whole life driven company, mutual company. I spent the other half of my career in the independent space. And in that old conservative, dividend paying world, whole life is the answer to everything. In the independent space, there's a greater affinity for index universal life. In the investment advisory space, the answer to everything is stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. So when people ask me, come on, Eszylfie, what's the deal? Should I invest in the market? Should I do this insurance? Should I buy real estate? Should I open my own business? Eszylfie, what should I do? The answer is yes. It's not 401k or IUL. It's 401k and IUL. In that, if you think about it, most 401k plans offered by an employer match a contribution. Meaning, if I put in $1 and my employer puts in $1, I don't care, IUL, PUL, GUL, don't matter. Take the money. It's money. So if you mean to tell me I put in $1, someone gives me $1, why wouldn't I take advantage of that? And then you're getting tax-deferred growth thereafter, and then your money's going to grow in correlation to the performance of the market. So there's some pros, right? I'm getting match on my money. I'm getting tax-deferred growth. I'm getting compounding interest. There are also cons. There are cons. You can't touch that money until you're 59 and a half without paying a 10% IRS penalty and tax. There is no guarantee of your principal. If the market goes up, you make money, but if the market goes down, you lose.
Right.
There's no leverage of your value to a future benefit to heirs, meaning if you got 100 grand in your 401k and you die, what does your family get? Now, some of you might mistakenly say they get 100 grand, and that's not true either, because that money's never been taxed. So they get 75 grand versus if I have $100,000 of cash value in my $1 million IUL and I die, my family gets $1 million bucks, right? So there are pros and cons. The con of the IUL, I call it the rich man's Roth IRA. I make a contribution, 10,000 to my IUL. I get no present day tax deduction. I'm funding that with after tax money. I put 10,000 in my 401k. I get to write that off. That's a value to some degree. But I get the same tax deferred growth. That's the same info. In my IUL, I have 3 outcomes, or there's 3 outcomes you're going to experience when you invest. Generally, you're going to make money, stay flat, or lose money. Make money, stay flat, lose money. In an IUL, the prospect of loss is eliminated. I can't lose money. I'm either going to make money, stay flat. That's a value. Because it's not a qualified retirement account, if an emergency or opportunity comes about, I can access those monies early. That's valuable. You cannot see the building I'm sitting in, but this is an office building I'm in. And you know who owns this office building?
You.
You know where the down payment for this office building came from?
IUL.
My cash value life insurance policy. So I was able to access those values at 38 years old, not 59 and a half, 38 years old, to be able to buy this building, make improvements, and literally make $1 million of growth in this building over the years. And to be honest, that's the only place that I had the money at the time, because everything else that I was doing, because I'm a gunslinger, was either tied up in something else or I lost it. So now I make $1 million in this building, pull out 250, refinance, put in my policy. So I've seen firsthand the value of insurance. I've seen firsthand the value of brokerage accounts and owning your own business and all these things. But the bottom line is there's no perfect product. There's no one thing that if anyone, hey, put all your money here and everything's going to be grand. There are pros and cons to everything. The true key is balance and diversification. So if someone said, okay, I make X amount of dollars, these are my core expenses, this is my discretionary income. From that discretionary income, then I would say this should go into savings, this should go into brokerage, this should go to your insurance, and so forth. So I think as long as people integrate the life insurance, whether you choose a whole life policy because you want guarantees and predictability, or you go with an IUL because you want something sexier that will give you a potentially greater probable outcome, that you understand that it's about balance and diversification. And then I think that's going to bode the best. I think when you diversify, you're never going to enjoy the highest of the highs, but you also don't experience the lowest of the lows.
So before we get you on the show, we have a segment called the hot seat question. You ready for this?
Stay ready.
That's good. What is the craziest sales story that ever happened to you? You had a long journey.
I've been through it all. I think anyone in this industry has had some like selfless, humbling moments. There's one story I don't share very often is that I had when I started my career, I started in New York Life and I was broke. So I would never park in the office building. I would always park in Target down the street and I'd walk to the office building because I didn't want to pay $200 a month for parking, right? That was like, to me, that was a waste. I'm like, I'll walk a block. And every day I'd walk into the office, I see this guy outside this mortgage office who was on the first floor, he was on the fourth floor, smoking a cigarette. So I see him every morning. So we started to get friendly. And one day he was like, "Man, what do you do?" Like, cause he was seeing me walking every day. I was like, "Man, I work here. I work insurance in New York Life." And he's like, "Man, you want a job?" I don't know why he offered me a job, but I was
Mhm.
like, "No, I'm good." I'm like, "But I'd actually love to show you what I do." So he was like, "All right." So I go in there, sit down, start talking to him, and he's like, "Man, I'm married. I got a daughter." He's like, "I'm making money." He's like, he was like, "Man, I need all this, man. I need IRA rollovers and insurance. Yeah, I'll do all this." And I was like, "Oh my God, like this is great." So I don't bother to get the guy's like cell phone number. I see the guy
On the
every
phone.
day. Right? He's
Yeah.
on the first floor, whatever. So the next week I go to his office and I walk in there and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm here to see James." And they're like, "James no longer works here." And I'm like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, he's not here." So I'm like, damn. So I walk back upstairs. The next day I call the office. Like I'm like, "Yeah, is James there?" Knowing he's not there. And they're like, "No, he's no longer here." And I'm like, "Oh, did he provide any like forwarding information or number?" They're like, "Nope." And I'm like,
Dang.
because at this point in my career, every deal matters, right? Like
Right.
every deal matters, right? And it's not too often that you have somebody go, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I want that insurance. Yeah, I want that." Like, so I was like, "Man, damn, okay."
Right.
So literally, my guy, months pass, and I just write him off out of my mind. Like I'm just like, damn, I don't. And oh, by the way, I knew he lived in Orange County, so I'm like, he don't even live local. I'm just gonna run
Mm.
into him. Like I don't even know anything about this guy. Just so happens one day I'm driving home and I'm driving north, and as I'm driving north, I see this man get on the freeway. So I so I get on the freeway too. It's almost like out of a cartoon because anybody LA traffic, right? They call the freeway called the 405. I call it the 4 or 5 because you're gonna go 4 or 5 miles an hour, right? Because there's so much traffic in rush hour. So it's so funny. He's on the freeway, I'm on the freeway, but we're literally going at a snail's pace. Like, so I can't catch up to him because there's no traffic. The flow of traffic is not allowing me to actually get up to him. So it takes
Uh-huh.
me like 5 or 6 miles to
Mm.
actually get like up to
To
him,
him.
right?
Mhm.
So then I'm playing it nonchalant, right? So I roll down my window. I'm playing it nonchalant, like I don't like. I'm just like it's like happenstance, and I'm like, "James," and he's like, "Hey," and we're literally having this conversation on the freeway, and we can hear each other because we're going so slow, right?
Uh,
And I'm like, "What's going on, my guy?" And I'm like, "Man, we need to catch up." And he's like, "Bro," he's like, "Now I need you more than ever." He's like, "I got a new job," and he was like, "Call me." So I'm literally with my knee driving, take my phone. I'm like, "What? Give me your phone number. Give me your email."
oh, man.
I reconnect with him. I go out to his office. He had changed mortgage banks. He went from making 400,000 a year to $1.4 million a year.
Wow.
And I wrote a $60,000 annual premium on him and his wife, and
Mm.
rolled over $200,000 from the old 401k.
Wow.
So I say this to say, most people would have had that moment and seen him going east when you're going north and be like, ah. But successful people aren't better. They're just willing to do the things that unsuccessful people are not willing to do. And so
Mhm.
I was like, I'm not, again, why I reference, I call it the sickness, right? I'm not going to let any opportunity pass me by. I assume nothing. And I've lived life long enough to know that sometimes, yes, things come to you and they might do again and they might come to you again and again and again and again. You might get 8, 9 chances at it, but sometimes you get one shot. So I live my life with this mantra: win the day. If this was the only time, if I was the last person ever to talk to you about buying life insurance, would you buy from me today? I'm the
Yep.
last person ever. How do you know that I'm not?
Mhm.
If this was the last opportunity you had to tell your family you love them, if this was the last opportunity you had to eat that filet mignon with the potatoes au gratin, would you like? So
Mm.
everything that I do in moments, I relish them. Richard A. Vogel said the most important time in life is not the past nor the future; it is the now.
Mm.
Yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift. That's why they call it the present, right? And so, my encouragement to all would be, maybe it's not your last day. Maybe you have hundreds of days left, millions. I don't know. But what if you don't? What if that opportunity to speak to that man or speak to that woman or take that shot or take that chance, what if that's the only one you had? Would you take it or would you
Just
let
let
it
it go
slip away
past.
like Eminem, right?
Mhm,
What would you
yeah.
do? What would you
Mm.
do? So I appreciate you so much, man, for having me on. Hope this was insightful and yeah, definitely
Definitely. I appreciate you for coming on too. Anything you want to say to your fans and supporters before you head out?
yeah, follow me on social media. Watch my show, Mind Body Money, Amazon, Tubi. Need 5 stars and stay hungry, my friends. Stay thirsty.